Black Waitress sees her childhood photo in Millionaire's mansion, shocked to find out. Gloria's hands trembled as she stared at the photograph on the mahogany side table. Her heart pounded so violently she thought it might burst through her chest. The silver serving tray she'd been carrying clattered to the marble floor, champagne flutes shattering into 1,000 glittering pieces across the immaculate floor of the mansion. Is everything all right? Mr. Richardson, the silver-haired millionaire, turned from his conversation with distinguished guests, his eyebrows furrowed with concern. Gloria couldn't breathe, she couldn't speak. Her eyes remained fixed on the ornately framed photograph, a little black girl in a yellow sundress standing on a porch she hadn't seen in over 40 years, herself, in this stranger's home. How do you have this? She finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper as she pointed at the photograph with a shaking finger. The room fell silent. The dozen wealthy partygoers all turned to stare at the black waitress in her 50-something in her crisp uniform, tears now streaming freely down her face. Mr. Richardson's expression changed from concern to something unreadable, shock, recognition, perhaps even fear. "Everyone out," he said quietly, then louder. "Everyone out, now." As the confused guests were ushered from the room by other staff, Mr. Richardson approached Gloria slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're her, aren't you?" he asked, his voice cracking with emotion. "You're Gloria Jean-Baptiste." Before she could answer, Gloria's vision began to blur at the edges. The last thing she saw was the millionaire lunging forward to catch her as her knees gave way and darkness claimed her. But let's go back to how this all started. It was just 3 hours earlier when Gloria arrived for her catering shift at the Richardson estate, unaware that her life was about to change forever. 3 hours earlier, Gloria Baptiste pulled her tired Honda Civic into the service entrance of the sprawling Richardson estate. At 58, she had spent more than 30 years working for elite catering, serving the wealthy in their mansions while trying to put her own daughter through college. Tonight was just another shift, the annual Richardson Foundation Charity Gala, an event where Philadelphia's elite gathered to congratulate themselves on their philanthropy while drinking champagne that cost more than Gloria made in a week. "You're cutting it close, Gloria," said Marcus, the catering manager, as she hurried through the kitchen doors in her black and white uniform. Marcus had been working with Gloria for nearly 20 years, and at 45 he still treated her with the respect of a seasoned veteran. "Sorry, Marcus, the bus was running late and Tamara needed help with her college application before I left." Gloria tied her apron around her waist with practiced efficiency. "What section am I taking tonight?" "Main parlor and east wing. Richardson has some special guests tonight, big donors from Chicago and New York. Be extra attentive." Marcus handed her a silver tray loaded with champagne flutes. "And Gloria, try to smile. These people tip better when they think we're happy to serve them." Gloria forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Like this," Marcus laughed. "That's terrifying. Maybe just focus on not dropping anything." The Richardson mansion was a monument to wealth, crystal chandeliers, original artwork, and antiques that probably cost more than Gloria's entire life savings. As she navigated through the growing crowd of guests in designer clothes and expensive jewelry, Gloria kept her eyes down, invisible as always. These people never really saw her, just the hands that delivered their drinks, the arms that cleared their empty plates. Jefferson Richardson, their host, was holding court near the grand fireplace. At 72, he was one of Philadelphia's most respected businessmen, silver-haired, distinguished, with the confident posture of a man who had never worried about money a day in his life. Beside him stood his son Thomas, a carbon copy of his father 30 years younger, with the same tailored suit and practiced smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jefferson raised his voice slightly, and the room fell respectfully silent. "Thank you all for coming tonight. The Richardson Foundation is proud to announce that this year's fundraising goal has been exceeded by 20%, allowing us to expand our educational initiatives in underserved communities." Polite applause rippled through the room. Gloria moved efficiently between groups, offering champagne and collecting empty glasses. She had heard variations of this speech year after year. The Richardson Foundation did good work, she couldn't deny that, but the gap between these people's lives and the underserved communities they discussed seemed impossibly vast. "Dad's in rare form tonight," a voice said close to Gloria's ear. She turned to find Thomas Richardson holding out an empty glass. Unlike his father, Thomas always acknowledged the staff, learning names and asking about families. It was a small kindness that Gloria appreciated. "He seems pleased with the turnout, Mr. Richardson," Gloria replied, taking his glass and replacing it with a fresh one. Please, it's Thomas. Mr. Richardson makes me look around for my father. He smiled warmly. How's your daughter doing, Tamara, right? Still at Temple University? Gloria was genuinely surprised he remembered. Yes, sir, finishing her nursing degree this year. That's wonderful. The world needs more dedicated nurses. Thomas glanced across the room. Excuse me, Gloria. I see the mayor's just arrived. As the night progressed, Gloria moved through the mansion with professional efficiency. The party had spread throughout the first floor, and she found herself in the east wing where fewer guests ventured. Here, the Richardson family's private photographs lined the walls, generational wealth captured in silver frames. Gloria didn't usually pay them much attention, but as she passed a small side table near the library entrance, something caught her eye. At first, she thought she was mistaken. She took a step back, nearly colliding with a potted plant. There, in an ornate silver frame, was a photograph she recognized, a little black girl, no more than 5 years old, in a yellow sundress standing on the porch of a small house. Gloria felt the air leave her lungs. The serving tray in her hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy. That little girl was her. That porch was the house in South Carolina where she had spent the first years of her life before moving to Philadelphia with her mother after her father died. A house that had been taken from them through foreclosure when Gloria was just 6 years old. What was her childhood photograph doing in Jefferson Richardson's mansion? Gloria's mind raced. There had to be a mistake. Maybe it just looked like her. But no, the torn left sleeve of the sundress, the way her hair was arranged in 2 puffs, the chipped blue paint on the porch steps. This was unmistakably her on the day before they left South Carolina forever. Her mother had taken this photo. It had been lost along with so many of their belongings when they were forced out. With trembling hands, Gloria reached for the photograph, then quickly withdrew. She couldn't touch it. She shouldn't be in this part of the house at all. But she needed answers. Find something interesting. Gloria jumped at the voice behind her. Jefferson Richardson stood watching her, his expression unreadable. I'm sorry, Mr. Richardson, I was just delivering drinks. Gloria gestured weakly to her tray. In the family wing without any guests present. His tone was not accusatory, merely curious. I got turned around. The house is so large. She couldn't take her eyes off the photograph. Sir, may I ask about that picture? Jefferson followed her gaze to the silver frame. His expression softened slightly. An old memory, from South Carolina 1969. Why do you ask? Gloria's heart thundered in her chest. 1969, the year before they left. No reason, sir, it just reminded me of somewhere I once knew. Jefferson studied her face intently, and for a moment Gloria thought she saw recognition flicker in his eyes, but then he simply nodded. You should return to the main parlor. I believe they need assistance with the dessert service. Yes, sir, right away. Gloria hurried from the room, her mind whirling with questions. How did Jefferson Richardson have a photograph of her as a child? What connection could this wealthy white businessman possibly have to her family's past in South Carolina? As she rejoined the party, Gloria tried to focus on her work, but her hands shook as she arranged dessert plates. Her thoughts kept returning to that photograph and the expression on Jefferson's face when she'd asked about it. You okay? Marcus asked, noticing her distraction. You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, Gloria lied, just tired. But she wasn't fine. Something about that photograph had opened a door to the past that she had long kept closed. After the dessert service, Gloria was assigned to clear glasses from the main parlor. As she worked, she overheard fragments of conversation between Jefferson and an elderly man she didn't recognize. Never thought I'd see the day you display that photograph, the man said quietly. Some debts can never be repaid, Harold, Jefferson replied, but acknowledging them is a start. Gloria moved closer, pretending to collect glasses from a nearby table. Does Thomas know? Harold asked. No, and I'd prefer to keep it that way, at least for now. Jefferson sighed heavily. Some secrets are better left buried. Not all secrets stay buried, Jeff. You of all people should know that. The conversation shifted as another guest approached, and Gloria forced herself to move on. Debts, secrets. What did any of this have to do with her childhood photograph? As the night wore on, Gloria felt an increasing urgency to understand the mystery. When most of the guests had moved to the garden for a special musical performance, she found herself alone in the main house with just a few stragglers. Before she could reconsider, her feet carried her back to the east wing. The photograph was still there, innocent and inexplicable in its silver frame. This time, Gloria reached out and lifted it carefully, examining the back. Written in faded blue ink was a date, June 12, 1969, and 2 words, Jean's daughter. Jean. Her mother's name. I wondered if you'd come back. Gloria nearly dropped the frame. Jefferson Richardson stood in the doorway, watching her with those same unreadable eyes. I'm sorry, Mr. Richardson, I can explain, no need. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. That's you in the photograph, isn't it, Gloria Jean Baptiste? Hearing her full name from his lips sent a chill down Gloria's spine. How do you know my name? Why do you have this picture? Jefferson gestured to a pair of leather chairs. Please sit down. I should get back to work. Sit, Ms. Baptiste, please. There was something in his voice, not a command, but almost a plea. Gloria lowered herself into the chair, still clutching the photograph. Jefferson took the seat opposite her, suddenly looking every one of his 72 years. I knew your mother, he said simply. Of all the explanations Gloria had imagined, this wasn't one of them. You knew my mother, Jean Baptiste? How? Jefferson's gaze drifted to the window, where the sound of the party continued in the distance. I was a different man back then. It was 1968 when I first came to South Carolina. My father had sent me to oversee some property acquisitions for Richardson Development, small towns, farmland, places ripe for commercial development. Gloria felt a coldness spreading through her chest. Our house, you took our house. Not personally, no, but the company I represented, yes. Jefferson met her eyes directly. Your mother worked as a cleaner in the motel where I was staying. We became friendly. The implication hung in the air between them. Gloria's mind raced through childhood memories, her mother working multiple jobs, the mysterious envelopes of cash that sometimes arrived, the way she would occasionally mention a kind man who had tried to help them. Were you and my mother? No, Jefferson interrupted quickly. Not in the way you're thinking. Jean was. She had principles. Integrity. She wouldn't accept anything that looked like charity or something else. But she did accept friendship and occasionally practical help. He reached for a crystal decanter on the side table, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. He offered one to Gloria, who shook her head. When the foreclosures began, I tried to intervene, Jefferson continued. But my father was ruthless in business, and I was too cowardly to stand against him properly. The most I could do was give your mother advance warning and enough money to start over somewhere else. Philadelphia, Gloria whispered. Yes, I suggested it because Richardson Development had no interests there at the time. Jefferson took a long drink. Jean sent me that photograph before you left, the only time she ever reached out. On the back, she wrote, "Remember the cost of your fortune." Gloria turned the frame over again, seeing the faded blue words in a new light. But that's not what it says now. No, I couldn't bear to see those words every day, but I couldn't bring myself to discard the photograph either. It was my reminder of a moral failure. A heavy silence filled the room. Through the window, Gloria could hear laughter from the garden party, a world away from this quiet confession. Why keep it all these years? She finally asked. Why display it in your home? Jefferson's eyes, when they met hers, were filled with regret. Penance, perhaps. Or maybe just the guilt of an old man nearing the end of his life. He leaned forward. Your mother was the most honest person I ever knew. I often wondered what became of her. And of you. She died, Gloria said flatly. 15 years ago, cancer. We couldn't afford the treatments that might have saved her. The words hung between them, an accusation Gloria hadn't meant to make but couldn't take back. Jefferson closed his eyes briefly, absorbing the blow. And you? He asked quietly. Did you have a good life, Gloria? Had she? Gloria thought of the decades of struggle, of working multiple jobs while raising Tamara alone after her husband left, of the dreams deferred and opportunities never realized. But she also thought of her daughter, brilliant and kind, about to become the first college graduate in their family. I had the life I made, she answered finally. Not the one that might have been mine if we'd kept our home. Jefferson nodded slowly. I understand. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small key. There's something else you should see. Before he could explain, the door opened, and Thomas Richardson entered. Dad, the mayor's asking for you. He stopped, taking in the scene, his father and the caterer sitting together, the photograph between them. Thomas, Jefferson began, but his son cut him off. What's going on here? Thomas looked from his father to Gloria with confusion. It's not what you think, Jefferson said, rising from his chair. Ms. Baptiste and I were just discussing some shared history. Shared history? Thomas repeated incredulously. With the catering staff, Gloria stood, placing the photograph carefully back on the table. I should return to work. No, Jefferson said firmly. Thomas, Ms. Baptiste is our guest now. Please tell Marcus she's off duty for the remainder of the evening. Thomas's expression darkened. Dad, what are you doing? We have over 100 guests. Do as I ask, please. Jefferson's tone left no room for argument. After Thomas left, clearly unhappy, Jefferson turned back to Gloria. I apologize for my son. He's a good man, but he's never known anything but privilege. Like father, like son, Gloria said, then immediately regretted the bitterness in her voice. Jefferson didn't take offense. Perhaps, though I'd like to think I've learned something in 72 years. He held up the small key again. This opens a safe in my study. Inside is a trust I established 30 years ago. Your name is on it. Gloria stared at the key in disbelief. A trust? For me? Why? As I said, Penance, I couldn't undo what happened to your family, but I could set aside something that might help if I ever found you. Jefferson placed the key on the table between them. I never actively searched. That felt too much like assuaging my own guilt, but I always hoped our paths might cross someday. How much? Gloria asked, unable to help herself. Originally $50,000 with interest and investments over 30 years, approximately $2 million. The room seemed to tilt beneath Gloria's feet. $2 million, more money than she could comprehend. Money that could pay off Tamara's student loans, buy them a real house, secure their future. I don't understand, she whispered. Why would you do this? Jefferson's answer was interrupted by a commotion from the hallway. Voices approaching quickly. The door burst open again and Thomas returned, this time with Marcus and 2 security guards. This woman has been going through private family areas, Thomas announced, pointing at Gloria. I want her removed from the property immediately. Thomas, stop this, Jefferson commanded, but his son ignored him. I've called the police, Thomas continued. Apparently, she's been asking questions about family photographs, possibly looking for items to steal. That's not true. Gloria protested, looking to Marcus for support, but her colleague kept his eyes down. I invited her here, Jefferson insisted, stepping between Gloria and the security guards. Thomas, you're making a terrible mistake. No, Dad, you're the one making a mistake. This woman is trying to manipulate you. Thomas turned to the guards. Escort her out. As one of the guards took Gloria's arm, she felt the panic rising in her chest. The photograph, she said desperately. It's me in that photograph. From South Carolina, your father knew my mother. Please just look at it. The guard hesitated, glancing at the silver frame. Thomas snatched it up, studied it for a moment, then scoffed. This is ridiculous. Some random photo of a black kid from the 60s doesn't prove anything. Look at the back, Gloria insisted. Something in her voice must have reached Thomas. Reluctantly, he turned the frame over, reading the faded inscription. Jean's daughter, he read aloud, then looked up in confusion. Jean. Who's Jean? Her mother, Jefferson said quietly. Jean Baptiste. The color drained from Thomas's face. Baptiste, but that's... He trailed off, looking at his father with dawning horror. Jefferson nodded slowly. Yes, that's why I asked you to leave us alone. What's going on? Gloria demanded, looking between father and son. What aren't you telling me? The silence that followed was broken by the arrival of 2 Philadelphia police officers, summoned by Thomas's call. The confusion escalated as Jefferson tried to explain the situation while Thomas stood frozen, still holding the photograph. In the chaos, Gloria felt herself growing lightheaded. Too much information, too many emotions, too many questions still unanswered. The faces around her began to blur, voices becoming distant and muffled. The last thing she remembered was reaching for the table to steady herself, knocking over the silver tray of champagne glasses she had abandoned earlier. As the glasses shattered across the marble floor, Gloria collapsed. How do you have this? She had asked, pointing at the photograph with a shaking finger. The room fell silent. The dozen wealthy partygoers all turned to stare at the black waitress in her 50-something in her crisp uniform, tears now streaming freely down her face. Mr. Richardson's expression changed from concern to something unreadable, shock, recognition, perhaps even fear. Everyone out, he said quietly, then louder. Everyone out, now. As the confused guests were ushered from the room by other staff, Mr. Richardson approached Gloria slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. You're her, aren't you? He asked, his voice cracking with emotion. You're Gloria Jean Baptiste. Before she could answer, Gloria's vision began to blur at the edges. The last thing she saw was the millionaire lunging forward to catch her as her knees gave way and darkness claimed her. If you're enjoying this story, please consider subscribing to hear more stories like this. Gloria awoke to the sound of quiet voices. She was lying on a sofa in what appeared to be a study, dark wood paneling, leather-bound books, the smell of cigar smoke lingering in the air. Jefferson and Thomas Richardson stood near the door, engaged in intense conversation. A woman in a nurse's uniform sat nearby who immediately noticed Gloria stirring. She's awake, the nurse announced, and both men turned. Thank God, Jefferson said, approaching the sofa. You gave us quite a scare, Ms. Baptiste. Gloria struggled to sit up, memories flooding back. The photograph is right here, Jefferson assured her, pointing to the silver frame now placed on the desk. Everything's all right, the party's over, the police have left, and you're safe. What happened? Gloria asked, accepting a glass of water from the nurse. You fainted, Thomas explained, his earlier hostility replaced by something Gloria couldn't quite identify, caution perhaps, or even fear. Stress and shock, the doctor said, nothing serious. Gloria took a long drink, her thoughts gradually clearing. How long was I out? About 20 minutes, Jefferson said. Not long enough for us to call an ambulance, but long enough to clear out the guests and resolve the misunderstanding. The way he said misunderstanding made Gloria suspect there was much more to the story. She looked at Thomas, who was studying her face with uncomfortable intensity. Why are you staring at me? She asked directly. Thomas startled slightly. I'm sorry, it's just now that I know to look, I can see it. See what? Jefferson placed a restraining hand on his son's arm. Thomas. But Thomas shook his head. She deserves to know, Dad, all of it. Know what? Gloria demanded, fully alert now. What haven't you told me? Jefferson sighed heavily, dismissing the nurse with a gesture. When the three of them were alone, he sat down in an armchair facing Gloria. I wasn't entirely honest with you earlier, he began, about my relationship with your mother. A cold knot formed in Gloria's stomach. What do you mean? Jean and I, we were more than friends. It was brief, just a few months in the summer of 1968, but it was. He paused, searching for words. It was the most genuine connection I'd ever experienced. Gloria felt the implication of his words like a physical blow. Are you saying? I don't know, Jefferson admitted. Your mother never told me. By the time I realized she was pregnant, she had already been with Robert Baptiste for several months. They married quickly, and I never asked. No, Gloria shook her head vehemently. Robert Baptiste was my father. My mother loved him. I believe she did, Jefferson agreed gently. And he raised you as his own. For all intents and purposes, he was your father. But biologically, Thomas interjected, earning a sharp look from Jefferson. Gloria felt the room spinning again. Could it be possible? Could this wealthy white man be her biological father? She thought of her mother, always evasive about the past, and of Robert Baptiste, who had died when Gloria was so young that her memories of him were like faded photographs themselves. I don't believe you, she said finally. This is crazy. I understand your skepticism, Jefferson said, and I have no right to force this information on you. If you want to leave now and forget everything that's happened tonight, I would understand completely. Gloria looked at the photograph on the desk, her 5-year-old self, innocent and unaware of the complicated history that surrounded her. The trust, she said suddenly. The $2 million, that's why, isn't it? Not penance, guilt. Jefferson had the grace to look ashamed. Perhaps both. I never knew for certain if you were my daughter, but the possibility was enough for me to want to provide for you somehow. And what about now? Gloria challenged. Now that we've met, now that you've seen my face, do you think I'm your daughter? Jefferson and Thomas exchanged a glance that Gloria couldn't interpret. I think, Jefferson said carefully, that it's possible, but only a DNA test would tell us for certain. And you want that? A DNA test? The idea seemed both absurd and terrifying to Gloria. Only if you do, Jefferson assured her. This is your choice, Gloria, all of it, including what happens with the trust. Thomas, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. If it helps, I'd like to know if we're siblings. The word hung in the air between them, siblings. The concept was so foreign, so unexpected, that Gloria couldn't process it. She had grown up an only child, raised by a single mother after Robert Baptiste's death. The idea of having a half-brother, a wealthy white half-brother 30 years her senior, was beyond comprehension. I need time, Gloria said at last. This is too much. Of course, Jefferson agreed immediately. Take all the time you need. The trust isn't going anywhere. He reached into his pocket and produced a business card. My private number, call me when you're ready to talk again. Gloria took the card mechanically, her mind still reeling. I should go home, my daughter will be worried. I'll have my driver take you, Jefferson offered. No, Gloria said firmly, finding her strength returning. I can take the bus, I've been taking the bus my whole life. As she stood to leave, Thomas awkwardly extended his hand. I'm sorry about earlier, the police, the accusations, I was out of line. Gloria looked at his hand for a long moment before shaking it briefly. Yes, you were. At the front door, Jefferson stopped her one last time. Gloria, regardless of what any test might show, I want you to know that I admired your mother immensely. She was a woman of remarkable character. Yes, Gloria agreed. She was, which makes me wonder why she never told me about you. With those parting words, she stepped out into the cool night air, leaving the Richardson mansion behind. The grounds were quiet now, the party long over. As Gloria walked down the long driveway toward the street, she felt as though she were moving through a dream or perhaps waking from one. The next morning, Gloria called in sick to Elite Catering for the first time in 5 years. She sat at her small kitchen table, Jefferson's business card before her, turning the previous night's revelations over in her mind. Mom, are you okay? Tamara appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas despite the late hour. At 22, she was the spitting image of Gloria at that age, the same determined eyes, the same quiet strength. "I'm fine, baby, just thinking." Tamara poured herself a cup of coffee and sat across from her mother. "You didn't get home until after midnight, and now you're calling in sick. That's not like you." Gloria had always been honest with her daughter. Through financial hardships, through Tamara's father abandoning them, through every challenge they had faced together, truth had been their foundation. But how could she explain last night's events when she still couldn't make sense of them herself? "Something happened at the Richardson gala," Gloria began hesitantly. "Did someone harass you?" Tamara's protective instincts flared immediately. "Because I'll go down there myself and no, nothing like that." Gloria smiled despite herself. "It's more complicated." Slowly, carefully, Gloria recounted the discovery of the photograph, Jefferson's revelations, and the possibility that had turned her world upside down. Tamara listened without interrupting, her expression changing from concern to disbelief to cautious excitement. $2 million, she whispered when Gloria mentioned the trust. "Mom, that's life-changing money." "It's not about the money," Gloria insisted, though part of her acknowledged that it absolutely was, at least partially, about the money. How could it not be? After a lifetime of financial struggle, the prospect of such security was overwhelming. "But it could pay for my med school," Tamara said, voicing the thought Gloria had been trying to suppress. "You wouldn't have to work double shifts anymore. We could buy a house." "If it's true," Gloria cautioned, "if any of it is true." Tamara reached across the table and took her mother's hand. "There's only one way to find out." Gloria knew her daughter was right. The question wasn't whether to call Jefferson Richardson, but when, and what she would do with the truth once she had it. 3 days later, Gloria found herself sitting in the same study where she had awakened after fainting. This time, she arrived through the front door, not the service entrance, a small distinction that felt symbolically significant. Jefferson greeted her with cautious warmth, while Thomas nodded awkwardly from across the room. "Thank you for coming," Jefferson said, gesturing to the comfortable chairs arranged around a coffee table. "Can I offer you anything? Tea? Coffee?" "I'm fine," Gloria replied, though her mouth was dry with nervousness. "Let's just get to the point." Jefferson nodded, understanding her directness. "Of course, as I mentioned on the phone, I've arranged for a private physician to collect DNA samples if that's what you decide." "I've been thinking about this nonstop," Gloria said. "About my mother, about Robert Baptiste, about the timing of it all." She took a deep breath. "I want to know the truth, but I need you to understand something first." Both Richardson men leaned forward slightly, their postures almost identical in their attentiveness. "If this test shows that you are my biological father," Gloria continued, looking directly at Jefferson, "that doesn't suddenly make us family. It doesn't erase 58 years of separation. It doesn't change who raised me or who I am." "I understand completely," Jefferson assured her. "I have no expectations, Gloria, only hopes." She raised an eyebrow. "Hopes. Hope that knowing the truth might bring you some peace. Hope that perhaps we might get to know each other, even a little, in whatever time I have left." His expression was earnest, vulnerable in a way Gloria hadn't expected from a man of his position. Gloria nodded slowly. "And the trust is yours regardless of what the test shows," Jefferson said firmly. "I established it 30 years ago out of a sense of obligation, yes, but also because it was the right thing to do. The circumstances of your family's displacement from South Carolina were unjust, to put it mildly. Consider it reparation, if not from the nation, then at least from one man who benefited from that injustice." His framing surprised Gloria. She had expected justifications, perhaps even conditions, but not this straightforward acknowledgement of historical wrongs. "All right," she said finally, "let's do the test." The procedure was simple cheek swabs collected by a discreet physician who asked no questions. 3 samples, Gloria, Jefferson, and at Thomas's insistence himself as well. The doctor promised results within a week, given the urgency, and Gloria suspected the substantial fee Jefferson had likely paid for expedited processing. As she prepared to leave, Thomas approached her somewhat hesitantly. Would you like to see the rest of the house?" "Properly, I mean, not as staff." The offer was awkward but seemed genuine. Gloria considered refusing but realized she was curious about the environment that might be connected to her own history. "Sure," she agreed. "A short tour." Thomas proved to be a surprisingly thoughtful guide, showing Gloria not just the grand spaces designed to impress, but the quiet corners that held family history. In the library, he pointed out books that had belonged to his mother, Elizabeth, who had died a decade earlier. In the solarium, he showed Gloria orchids he had been cultivating as a hobby. Each revelation humanized him slightly in Gloria's eyes. "And this," Thomas said, opening a door to a small, warmly decorated room, "was my mother's private study. Dad never changed it after she passed." Gloria stepped inside, taking in the feminine touches, floral curtains, watercolor paintings, a delicate writing desk. "It's lovely," she said sincerely. "She was a good person," Thomas said quietly. "Complicated like all of us, but good. She knew about South Carolina, about Jean. Dad told her everything before they married." Gloria turned to him in surprise. "She knew there might be someone like me out there." Thomas nodded. "She made Dad promise to set up the trust." "It was her idea, actually." He hesitated, then added, "If the test shows what Dad thinks it will, I want you to know that my mother would have welcomed you. She was that kind of woman." The statement, unexpected and unasked for, touched Gloria deeply. She had spent 3 days thinking of herself as potentially the unwanted secret, the living evidence of an affair. The idea that Jefferson's wife might have acknowledged her, even hypothetically, had never occurred to her. "Thank you for telling me that," she said quietly. On the drive home, Gloria found herself thinking about families, the ones we're born into, the ones we create, and the ones that might have been. She thought of her mother, Jean, making difficult choices in impossible circumstances. Of Robert Baptiste, who had given Gloria his name and his love, however briefly. Of Tamara, waiting anxiously at home for news. The week that followed was the longest of Gloria's life. She returned to work, serving other wealthy families with the same professional detachment she had always maintained. But something had shifted inside her, a new awareness of the vast disparities that had shaped her life, and the random chances that determined so much of human destiny. On Friday evening, Gloria's phone rang. Jefferson's number. "The results are in," he said without preamble. "Would you like to come to the house tomorrow to discuss them?" "No," Gloria replied firmly. Neutral ground. "There's a cafe near Temple University called Saxby's, noon tomorrow." If Jefferson was surprised by her assertiveness, he didn't show it. "We'll be there." That night, Gloria told Tamara about the scheduled meeting. "Do you want me to come with you?" her daughter asked. Gloria considered the offer. Having Tamara there would provide emotional support, but this felt like something she needed to face alone, at least initially. "Not this time," she decided. "But stay close to your phone." Cafe was busy when Gloria arrived, students and faculty from the nearby university filling most of the tables. She spotted Jefferson and Thomas immediately, their expensive casual wear and Richardson bearing making them stand out despite their efforts to blend in. Gloria approached their table, noting the sealed envelope placed precisely in the center. "Gentlemen," Jefferson stood to greet her, then gestured to the empty chair. "Thank you for suggesting this place. It's refreshing to be some." The awkward small talk continued through the ordering of coffees. None of them touched the envelope. Finally, when the server had departed, Gloria pointed to it. "Is that them? The results?" Jefferson nodded. "Yes, I asked the doctor to send them directly to me unopened. None of us knows what they say yet." "Then let's find out," Gloria said, reaching for the envelope with a steadiness that surprised even herself. Inside was a single sheet of paper with clinical formatting and scientific terminology. Gloria scanned it quickly, looking for the conclusion. When she found it, she fell silent, reading the words over and over to ensure she understood correctly. "Well?" Thomas asked, his usual confidence replaced by genuine uncertainty. Gloria placed the paper on the table where they could all see it. "Probability of paternity, 99.97%. She looked directly at Jefferson. "You are my biological father." The cafe continued its bustle around them, oblivious to the life-altering revelation that had just occurred at their table. Jefferson closed his eyes briefly, as if in prayer or thanks. Thomas exhaled slowly, studying Gloria's face with new awareness. "I never really doubted it," Jefferson said finally. "Something in me recognized you that night, even before I saw your reaction to the photograph." Gloria felt strangely calm. The shock had come days ago with the possibility. The confirmation somehow was easier to absorb. "So now we know." "Now we know," Jefferson echoed. "The question is, what happens next?" It was the question Gloria had been asking herself all week. What did she want from this connection? Money, certainly. The practical side of her couldn't deny the importance of the trust for Tamara's future. But beyond that, "I don't know," she admitted. "This doesn't magically make us a family. It doesn't erase the past." "No," Jefferson agreed. "But perhaps it could be the beginning of something new, not to replace what was, but to add to what is." Thomas, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. "I have a daughter," he said. "Eliza, she's 16, she would be your niece." He seemed almost shy as he added, "She's interested in medicine, like your Tamara." The mention of family connections beyond Jefferson himself gave Gloria pause, a niece, perhaps even cousins for Tamara. Extended family she had never imagined having. "This is a lot to process," she said honestly. "I need time." Of course, Jefferson said quickly. Take all the time you need. The trust paperwork is ready whenever you are, regardless of what else you decide. As they prepared to leave, Jefferson reached into his jacket and withdrew a small, well-worn envelope. I found this among my papers last night. I thought you should have it. Gloria opened it carefully. Inside was another photograph, her mother, young and beautiful, sitting on the steps of the South Carolina house. She was laughing at something off camera, her face radiant with joy. I took that, Jefferson said softly, the summer we met. Gloria stared at her mother's face, seeing both the woman she had known and the young woman she had never met, full of dreams and possibilities before life had narrowed her options. Thank you, she whispered, carefully returning the photograph to its envelope. Outside the cafe, as they prepared to part ways, Jefferson asked one final question. Would it be all right if I called you, perhaps once a week, just to talk? Gloria considered the request. I work most evenings. Mornings are better. Sundays, maybe. Jefferson's face brightened. Sunday mornings would be perfect. As Gloria watched the two Richardson men walk toward their waiting car, she felt neither the triumph nor the resentment she might have expected. Instead, she felt something like peace, the beginning of an acceptance that her life story was more complicated than she had known, but perhaps also richer. That evening, Gloria and Tamara sat together on their small apartment balcony, sharing the events of the day and examining the newly confirmed connection to the Richardson family. So what happens now? Tamara asked, echoing Jefferson's question from earlier. Gloria looked out over the city lights, thinking of all the turns her life had taken, the struggles, the sacrifices, the small joys and persistent hopes. Now, she said, we see what's possible. 2 months later, Gloria stood in the doorway of her new home, a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, purchased with a portion of the trust funds. Tamara was upstairs, arranging her room before returning to her final semester at Temple, now free from student loan debt and already accepted to medical school for the following year. The doorbell rang, and Gloria smoothed her dress nervously before answering. Jefferson stood on the porch, a small package in his hands. Behind him, Thomas waited beside the car with a teenage girl, Eliza, Gloria's newly discovered niece, looking as uncertain as Gloria felt. We brought a housewarming gift, Jefferson said, offering the package with a smile that reminded Gloria unexpectedly of her own. Come in, she replied, opening the door wider. All of you. As the Richardson family, her family, in a way she was still coming to understand, entered her home, Gloria thought of her mother. What would Jean-Baptiste think of this unexpected reunion? Of the chance discovery that had connected two worlds separated by race, class, and decades of silence? Gloria liked to believe her mother would approve. Jean had always taught her that life was too short for bitterness, too precious for regret. Make the best of what comes, she used to say, and give the best of what's in you. Standing in her new living room, surrounded by old and new family, Gloria felt she was finally doing both. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.